Hi everyone, David Aragona and Ashley Mailloux here, taking a look at one of the graded stakes on Saturday at Woodbine. Race 7 is the Grade 3 Vigil, going 6 furlongs on the Tapeta surface. A field of 8 signed on, and Ashley, the one they all have to beat and catch is the number 6, Patches O'Houlihan, the 7-5 morning line favorite. 3-year-old facing older horses, but he's already beaten older horses in a similar stakes race, and he's developing quite a win streak on the Tapeta surface.
He certainly is 5 for 5 up at Woodbine. And, you kind of look at his races just in general this season. I think he's been questioned a little bit, maybe not by the bettors, but he went heavily favored 2 starts back, still favored last time out. But as you mentioned, he had to face older horses. He was also stretching out slightly to 6.5 while tackling graded stakes competition for the first time. And he still was able to pull it off. He's going to be very challenging in this race. He's 7-5 on the morning line, and rightfully so.
Before we get to the main contenders, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race to see how Patches O'Houlihan might find himself in the early stages, or where he might find himself in relation to some of the other speeds. And unlike last time, where he was able to sneak away on the front end, albeit through some legitimate fractions, in this race he's projected to get some more company towards the front end from horses like the number 1 Rockcrest and the number 8 My Buddy B. Feels like this pace could be a little more competitive and on the faster side.
It certainly could. Rockcross has that natural gate speed, draws the inside, and I think just didn't handle the turf the same way that he usually does the Tapeta, as we've seen in 2 and 3 starts back. And then the case on the outside, the long shot, My Buddy B for Paulo Lobo. He's very quick. The question for him is really going to be the synthetic up at Woodbine. He actually does have a synthetic win back in 2022 at Turfway Park, but he's been pretty much speedy as long as he breaks sharp.
Well, let's go through some of these main contenders. We'll take them in post-position order, beginning with the number 1, Rockcrest. And let's take a look at his most recent victory. 2 back, going this same 6 furlong distance on the Tapeta in the Pink Lloyd Stakes. And this day, he just got to the front end, was able to set some pretty moderate to slow fractions, and then sprint away through the late stages. Actually, this time, he's going to be under the gun from the inside. I'm not sure he's going to be able to set such a comfortable pace against some of the speedy foes that he's facing in this spot.
He looked comfortable throughout in that race in the Pink Lloyd, and I completely agree with you. I don't think he's going to be as comfortable. I think his hand is forced with the inside draw, which helps him. I mean, he's going to go. Typically, he is on the engine from the get-go. I think in the turf, the big thing is they were just quicker, and it was the turf last time out when we saw him in the Vice Regent. But he could also improve, second off that little bit of a freshening. He's been known to do that as well.
Yeah, I think you really hit on it. He's a horse that's just better on the Tapeta surface. He's had much more success on the synthetic as opposed to the turf. The number 2, Old Chestnut, is a horse that has also gone back and forth between surfaces in recent starts, but he seems about equally talented on the synthetic as well as the turf. Hasn't won that much recently since that optional claiming victory early in the year back in April, but he's had a steady diet of graded stakes races, has kept good company, just wasn't able to reel in Patches O'Houlihan last time, and I'm not sure what's going to be different here.
He is a tough horse to figure out. Marty Drexler sent out 3 in the Bold Venture. He's going to have to face one of those horses again, directly to his outside, Super Watson. But when you look at the race 2 back in the Grade 2 event on the turf, I thought he had maybe some trouble. And once again, I thought maybe he had a little bit of an excuse in the Bold Venture. But when it starts to become a repetitive thing, I don't think it's an excuse anymore. It's a little bit of a habit on his part. I think he's a hard-knocking horse who typically gets a piece, but you have to wonder, as you said, what is going to be the difference maker here? What's going to make the light bulb go on completely? And I'm not sure that's going to happen against this group.
Up next is the number 3, Super Watson. Now let's take a look at his victory 2 back when he won an optional claiming allowance race over the Tapeta surface, going the 6 furlong distance. And on this day, he got a fair pace to close into, and he came with his usual good late kick to run down this field. This was his 3rd win in his last 4 starts coming into this race. He ran back next time in the Bold Venture and wasn't able to beat Patches O'Houlihan, as well as some others that also come back in the spot, including Old Chestnut that we just talked about. But Ashley, watching that Bold Venture, Patches O'Houlihan just slammed on the gas in that second quarter mile. He really opened up on the field, and some horses just came off the bridle, couldn't keep pace with that aggressive second quarter, and Super Watson was one of them. You could just see he was under a ride very early in that race, and I think that took away from his late kick. If they take him back and make one run this time, he could be more successful.
I agree, and I think I remember speaking to Marty Drexler before this race. He mentioned Super Watson's going to need a pace setup. He had the outside draw, and while the pace was quick. You hit the nail on the head by saying Patches O'Houlihan went out there and had no problem doing what he was doing on the front end. It wasn't like the pace was really coming back to them. And I think when you look at, say, the top 2 and 3 finishers in that race, I know we'll get to Last American Exit in a little bit. He was closer to Patches early on, and I think that was the advantage in the race. They weren't beating him, but those are the horses that typically ran better. So I do think Super Watson did have a valid excuse in that last out.
The number 4 is Secret Reserve. He's another runner that's coming out of the Bold Venture. He was the 4th place finisher in that race, just sort of picking up pieces at the end. He was never really a threat to get into one of the top spots, but he was passing tired rivals at the end of that race. And that's kind of been the story of this horse. He hasn't won much recently, not at all this year, but he's run some decent races. Just feels like he might be destined for another minor award this time.
He just seems like he was better at a younger age. 2 and 3 was, that's where 4 of his wins came, as you said. He only had that one win last year, which was in the Bold Venture. And since then, a lot of third place finishes. They've tried different things with him. He actually was able to make up some ground in the Bold Venture in his last couple. But sometimes we actually see him tracking the pace, and he just doesn't have that late punch to get the job done. They've been adamant about keeping him between 5.5 and 6.5 since 2021. And we've only seen him in the winner's circle once. So he figures to be a big price here. But I will say he was working well before his last race, and I think he ran okay in the Bold Venture. But he's got another really sharp work in preparation for this race, 45-3 on the Tapeta.
The number 5 is Last American Exit, another horse that figures to be a big price in this race, but he was a big price last time, going off at 45-1 in the Bold Venture, and actually got up for second that day. He was sort of with the flow of that race because, like we've been talking about, that was a race where the pace really did hold together, and he just kind of chased home Patches O'Houlihan. But he did run the best race of his career last time, so at least he's in good form.
He's in really good form. His last 2 have been very solid, and I know the past performances look different than they did last year. He was a 4-time winner. He had won some softer spots than obviously this one back in 2022. But he's only missed the board once this season. And I think it really came down to the tactics. The pace was really hot. He was forwardly placed and he tired. I think they've really figured out in those last 2 starts where he wants to be early on. And even at a price, I think there's a situation where he can get a piece in this race.
The number 6 is Patches O'Houlihan. Let's take a look at that Bold Venture that we've been talking about. He was, of course, the winner of that race, beating the older horses as the only 3-year-old in the field. And he opened up around the far turn. The field came to him at the quarter pole, and you have to like the way that he digs in here and kicks on again to put away these rivals and win the race going away by a length and a half. So not only does he have that speed, but he's also got some fight in him. So he's just a horse that loves to win races, and he's going to be ultra tough in this spot. But when you look at his speed figures compared to the rest of this field, it's not like he's got some huge edge over the field, and does feel like he's going to be a pretty short price in this race.
He's going to be a very short price, David, and it's whether or not you want to take that short price on him. He's hard to ignore, undefeated in 2023, and we talked about the graded stakes competition last time out, older horses, even the distance. I mean, in the stretch when you're watching the replay, he goes, no way he's going to get 6.5. These horses are going to pass him, but he had that grit that he needed to get the job done. And I know the connections looked at other spots. They thought about trying him on the dirt in the Lake Erie that was run earlier this week, and they've decided to stick with what's working for him, which is the Tapeta up at Woodbine, and he's already proven himself at the grade 3 level.
Drawn towards the outside, there were 2 interesting runners coming in from out of town, both switching surfaces. The number 7 is Outlaw Kid. Let's take a look at his most recent start in the Vice Regent when he was a winner on the turf, going 5 furlongs at Woodbine. And he has been much more of a turf specialist during his career, actually having never tried the synthetic before. But he's a horse that ran okay on the dirt. He's run well on the turf. So he's got that surface versatility that suggests that maybe synthetic could be within his wheelhouse. He ran so well at the start of the year, impressively winning that optional claiming race at Belmont. Since then, he's sort of been struggling to build on that performance. He's just kind of, plateaued from a speed figure standpoint. So he might need a step forward on the Tapeta to beat this field.
Yeah, he will need to take a step forward, but I thought last time out, at least he got that confidence boosting win that he was probably needing since his other 2 races weren't the greatest. And I'm curious to see him now, though, on the surface change. I think he's had a really good career in terms of his trips, that he's been able to sit just off the pace. And last time out, I know it was on the turf, but the pace was still good enough that if he was just a handful of lengths, he was able to make that really nice late run, which I think is a positive sign. And Kazushi Kimura is going to stick with him here. That's never a bad thing as well. So there is some intrigue here.
And then the number 8 is My Buddy B. Let's check out his last race at Mountaineer Park when he was a winner of an allowance race going 6 furlongs over a decent field of horses who had some good form coming into that race. And he's also been in good form, won his last 2 races, both on the dirt. Like you were saying, though, going back to that pace projector, actually, he is a horse that has one prior synthetic race that came all the way back in his career debut at Turfway. And actually faced a pretty good horse that day in Blue Devil, who's gone on to develop into a nice allowance horse. And he was game to win that lone synthetic start. So it seems like he handles the surface. And after that, he sort of regressed on the dirt and synthetic. So maybe rather the dirt and the turf. So maybe he liked synthetic more than it even seemed at the time. And now he's getting back on that surface here.
Yeah, he's intriguing. He's either there or he isn't. He's 6 for 10 in his career in terms of wins and nothing outside of that. No second or third place finishes. And he's just been an interesting horse to see the places that he's popped up. They had him in Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, even Belterra to kick off his 2023 campaign. So it seems like it's been a little strategic in terms of where they've been sending him, but we've talked about his natural gate speed. He's going to draw to the outside in here, and he certainly has developed since then. He has more race day experience. So I agree. He might be able to even show something more than he showed on his debut, which is a winning one on the synthetic.
And the good news for him being a speed in this race is that at least he's drawn on the outside, so he can sort of get comfortable without taking kickback or getting shuffled back towards the inside in case he doesn't break that well. And I did look up some stats for his trainer, Paulo Lobo, who has just great numbers in synthetic races, especially synthetic sprints over the past 5 years. In a 90-horse sample, he's winning at 28% with a $3.22 ROI. So definitely a strong move for the barn in these types of races. And Paulo Lobo, just the kind of trainer that's a better and a handicapper's friend, because it's pretty easy to find some good stats for him. He sends out some prices that can win races. Let's throw up our top picks for this Vigil Stakes. And Ashley, you're going to go with Patch O'Houlihan. Can't blame you. He's just going to be really tough to beat based on his prior synthetic form. He loves to win races.
Yeah, and last time out, I questioned him a little bit. I was not sure I liked him in the race. Obviously, he's hard to knock going into that race, but I thought he showed something that he needed to show, older horses on that little bit of stretch out. So I think he's going to be extremely tough in here, but it's a race where he's going to be such a short price, and maybe he's going to take a little bit more pressure early on, that maybe you do look at another horse and I see you go to the outside here with a long shot.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that horse on the outside, the number 8, My Buddy B. I'm not sure I'm going to get the 20-1 that he is on the morning line, because he's got some competitive speed figures, and there's certainly a case to be made for him, but just a horse that might appreciate getting back on the synthetic surface, and I think he could fly a little bit under the radar with Patch O'Houlihan likely to take so much money in this race. So the number 8, My Buddy B for me, and the number 6, Patch O'Houlihan for Ashley in the Grade 3 Vigil Stakes on Saturday at Woodbine. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.